Hello, welcome back to my channel. Currently we're here at the Gold Coast. Today we're going to be discussing life after Emirates. For those of you joining me for the first time, I was an international flight attendant for Emirates for 7 years. Okay, let's talk here so it's not too sunny. I resigned from Emirates 2 years ago, moved to Queensland. I'm originally from South Australia, Adelaide, where my family is also living. Now I live here in Queensland with my partner of 4 years now, I think. A lot of people ask about what it's like to leave Emirates. It's not really talked about as much as joining the company. There's a lot of curiosity attached to taking up a career path in flight attending, but not a lot of stuff that goes into what happens after flight attending. Leaving Emirates, was it hard? Yes. That's a firm yes. I remember when I resigned, and I would tell people on my flights that I had resigned, the most common word used was congratulations. That's because the lifestyle is kind of hard to leave. Given that you live on a roster to roster basis, you might have a bad roster and think, I'm quitting. But then you have an amazing roster and you're like, oh yeah, I can really do this. Sometimes your idea about leaving doesn't really come into fruition until 7 years later. Well, the thing was, on my 5th year, so my 5th anniversary of being in the company, I thought I was going to leave until I met Mr. Lovely, who thought it might be a good idea if we tried dating each other. And I thought, you know what? I haven't really liked a guy in forever, and I think we're good together, so let's give it a shot. Though he was aware that I wanted to leave, I was also aware that there was a big chance that he wasn't ready. You have to kind of be ready. That was what led to my extra 2 years of being there, hence the total of 7 years of being at Emirates. My recommendation to those of you who are still there, I'd say mentally prepare yourself. Not because the real world is bad or not recommendable. Absolutely, I recommend it, but it is quite the adjustment. I guess for us it was a bit of a larger adjustment, being that I had been there for 7 years and Billy had been there for 9 years. The bulk of our 20s was spent in that sort of environment and in that sort of lifestyle. I guess the longer you're there for, the more I would say you have to mentally prepare yourself for what you're about to walk into. Just note, this is based on my experience. I know that everyone's experiences can be different, so my experience may have nothing to do with yours. A lot of people said that it would be hard and, you know, said that it would take a couple of years, and maybe it was a little bit harder for me because I didn't really believe them. Yes, I was quite skeptical about the whole thing. I just thought to myself, well, if you prepare yourself well enough before you leave, then you should be fine. But really, there's nothing like reality to kick you in that and tell you what life really is like. No one could really pinpoint difficulties, and I understand why that is now. It's because it's a combination of things, and that combination of things happens simultaneously. It's not like you go, okay, step 1 you move here, step 2 you do this. No, basically it's like a tornado of all the things that you need to care about, and it all happens simultaneously. It's kind of hard to grasp what's going on. But this is my summary of things. I've made the summary based on what I know in hindsight. Now that that situation is in the past, I can sort of look at it a little bit more clearly. So the first thing that you have to worry about, I guess, is where to live. Billy and I had bought our places separately before each of us moved to Dubai. He had his tenants, I had my tenants. The reason we had moved to Brisbane was because his house is here and mine was in the Philippines. Because he had had his place for a few years and had had it tenanted in all that time, when we came back here we didn't have to worry about the expense of renting or paying off a big mortgage. It made more sense for us to move to Brisbane rather than anywhere else. At least that was one thing off our plate. That was pretty much one of the easier things we had to manage. If you're in Dubai right now, or if you're about to go to Dubai, I recommend putting this on your project plate. Make sure that when you are out of Dubai, you have enough savings to see you through the first few months of settling in. When you come back to the real world, just living expenses and bills and insurance and all these things that adults have to deal with pretty much churns through a lot of the savings that you have. Number 2, what job do I want versus what job can I get? I thought that I was qualified for a bunch of other things, marketing, communications, the corporate world, because that's what my degree says. I have a degree in communications, media and culture. I specialize in media productions. I had a minor in performing arts, wherever that was going, I don't know. For this reason, I thought that I could leave Emirates and just hop straight into the corporate world and build the career that I had always wanted. I was very wrong. Of course, if you haven't used your degree in about 7 years, it's probably not really going to serve you very well. Also, no one cares that you can evacuate an aircraft in 90 seconds, because really that has nothing to do with spreadsheets, PR proposals, meetings, deadlines. Maybe deadlines, yes. But anything else, no. It really has nothing to do with the corporate world or what I thought I had wanted to do. I applied for a lot of jobs. I would imagine that I was up against people who had dedicated their time and their years to building the career that I thought I had deserved. I see now why things worked out the way they did. The only people that deemed my resume half-worthy were the folks in the hospitality and the airline industry. I used my experience in photography to get me some photography work here in Australia. Just a little side story. I was learning how to do photography and I was at the printers, and then this designer saw my work and she kind of liked it. So when she said, "Are you the photographer?" I was like, "Yes, I am the photographer." I remember going off to London that evening that I was at the printers, just speed reading through photography articles online, going through YouTube, just going, "Oh my god, what on earth am I going to do?" And then I came back to Dubai and we did the photo shoot. This designer that I had worked with, she ended up doing the opening show for Dubai Fashion Week. As a result of that, the pictures that I took ended up being blown up into these big billboards and were posted on the major roads of Dubai. So my CV looked pretty alright. I used that, tried to get some work here as a photographer. I should probably really apologize to those people that I worked with at the time for all the mistakes that I made. Oh man, the blunders which I had done at the time. But like I said, I was trying to fake it till I make it. I was quite brave in that way in terms of trying things. I guess I didn't really know any better. Now that I look at it, I'm like, ugh. I did learn though, and I learned how to do things right, and that came only with time and some very painstaking dedication. All in all, the rejections for all the jobs that I had gone for were quite fierce. My self-esteem took a little bit of a beating. I felt lost and I felt disappointed in the jobs that I was actually getting. As far as I was concerned, I was not interested in hospitality, especially after feeling like I'd been doing that for so long on the plane. And to top it off, I wasn't actually making any friends in the kind of work that I was doing. I had the worst job interview of my life and I somehow managed to wing it all the way through to the job interview part of things, where they started asking about experience and what I would do in certain situations, and I knew that interview was steadily going downhill. I said to the guys, "I would really love to work in your team, and if I don't get this, can I have an internship?" It was bad. Oh my god. I think I left my brain at home that day. I was like, "Yeah, let's go to another interview." And my brain was like, "Nope, bye Felicia." Then I went home and told all my phantom friends about it. That was not a good place. No. One of the things I had to come to terms with was the fact that the people around me seemed to have it all together. They're all so grown up. I think I'd always wanted to be one of those people with a budding career in something, and I realized the only budding career I had at the time was a budding career in walking to the pantry. I think I was looking for a job and a career to define me, because I didn't know what defined me anymore. I no longer had the job that I did have. I didn't wear the uniform that I wore. There was probably part of me that wanted to be surrounded by people who reminded me of me, because at the time I was quite lost. So I'm really not too sure that I knew who I was at the time. That's why I think it was a little bit challenging. The other thing I had to come to terms with was routine. The good thing about Dubai is that at the end of the day, you know, at some point it's going to come to an end. If you're having a bad day, you can just say to yourself, "It doesn't matter, I'm leaving anyway. I'm just going to hand in my resume and be like, adios bitches, see you later. I'm going to my other real life." The difference with the real world is that you think like, this is real, this is my life. For those people who are cabin crew, you kind of think that the end of the line or the light at the end of the tunnel is the part where you go home and then you live happily ever after. But then when you're in your happily ever after and you can't be like, submit a resignation letter, I think it can be a bit daunting because you realize you can't just run away anymore. So the truth is, when I first got back and all of this stuff was happening, being jobless and not having any friends, I was hating life. And I'm not a hater of life in any way, oh my goodness, no. I love life. I think that's why it was such a struggle for me, because I was so confused. I didn't know what was happening with me. I felt as though I had no direction. I felt lost. I think one thing that I didn't realize was lingering through my everyday was the fact that my immediate family and my best friends would not be part of my daily life. And I think this was a big crux of the whole saga. The thing is, when you're a cabin crew, you walk into your briefing room, and a briefing room is where you have your pre-flight meeting. It's like all of a sudden you've got something in common, because all the people that you're sitting in the briefing room with, even though you're all from different countries and you're different backgrounds and all of these things, you do have something in common, and you're all wearing the same uniform. So all of a sudden that binds you. You can talk about cities around the world, where to eat, where to drink, where to go dancing. When I came back to Australia, it was kind of hard to relate to a lot of folks because I didn't have a lot of things in common with anyone. So the only people who I could relate to because of who I am and my past and my roots is my family and my friends. If the me now could speak with the me then, I would have said, don't worry about it. Number one, you'll be able to let it go. Number two, if you knew that you could let it go, you'll just be able to move forward and get on with it and stop being so dramatic. I was very dramatic at the time because I was so confused. I didn't have anyone to be like, can you just get your together and stop this nonsense and everything is going to be fine. So with all of that said, all those things, living space, joblessness, friends situation, routine, that all started to affect the relationship that I'm currently in. Our relationship was in its the worst time. I think our for better or for worse came very prematurely in our relationship. Our for better when we were still at Emirates and then we could just hop on a plane and have this beautiful romantic holiday, and our for worse was when the honeymoon ended and all of a sudden we were both adapting to this kind of life, being smacked into reality. Neither of us really knew what to do. Neither of us had a career path. We were both just trying things and then ending up disappointed. And you know what they say, you know, if you're not really happy with yourself, it's hard to support anybody else. I think that was what was going on with me and what was going on with him. Both of us were sort of going through a phase of discontentment in our own lives. For that reason, I think I was also very selfish. I completely neglected to think that he was going through the same thing as I was. And I probably made it harder for him because instead he was coming home to someone who was being really insensitive about what was going on in our lives. I think I got lucky. My partner has a very good head on his shoulders because I can't say that I did at the time. So here's what they say, right? There is a 2-year waiting period, a 2-year waiting period before things get good and things get normal. And I gotta say, for me, that rang very true. And I would say if that doesn't apply to you at all, then that is awesome. Congratulations. You don't have to put up with that stuff. I feel like when we do real talk, I get all like dire. I don't really mean to, but these are the truths of things that happen in my life. Sometimes I feel like it's a good idea to come clean because the other videos you see the happy me now, which is now. But at the time things did get pretty blah. That's probably one of the reasons why my episodes are quite light-hearted. I've gone through that, I survived through that, and now I feel like all of this and the videos that I make, they're in celebration of having passed that. For me, that was really one of the most difficult phases of my life. So how did I get from there to here? I wish I could say patience, but that's not true. I wasn't patient at all. I think what happened was that at some stage I realized that I had to prioritize. I couldn't organize that cyclone of things going on, but I could do one thing. I could say, where am I having issues right now? I started gathering what was most important to me, and I thought to myself, I'm feeling lost, what do I need? I realized I had to make friends. After doing all that freelance stuff, I went to the normal workforce. I managed a yoga studio, and that was really nice. I learned a lot of things from that, but I realized I was still quite lonely. I wasn't really making any friends. Billy was always saying to me, why don't you go back into the airline? You know it and you're qualified for it. After all those months of battling him saying no, I just thought, well, what have I got to lose? Am I so high on my high horse that I'm too good for that? Because obviously no, because I'm miserable. But luckily there was an airline which started a whole new department, so I went for it. Good. That was the best thing that happened to me. And now I have my own friends that I made here in Queensland, and I love them. I needed that to help myself settle. And also I was quite comfortable in that environment. I kind of felt at home. We've been back in Queensland for 2 years. Now that I'm in a good headspace, I've got my friends, I managed to tick that box. I think that's why I started this. Hello. Now that I feel a lot more complete and whole and not so worried about how to settle into life, I can create things again. But it really did take time. But when you get here to the real world, don't worry, everything will be fine. Just be patient. Thanks very much for watching. If you liked today's episode, please give this a like. If you have any comments or questions, please pop them below. If you haven't already subscribed to my channel, please do subscribe. Not all of my talks are so sad and so sad. Some of them are quite fun and happy. But every now and then we do a real talk because life isn't all rainbows and unicorns as much as we want it to be. Otherwise, I'll see you next week. Bye. Come here, let me give you a kiss. Bye. Bye. She ended up having the what the hell am I talking about? The real world kind of takes a little bit of a beating on you. Hey, look, you gotta pay insurance now. Oh, look at that. I don't know. Shall we watch the sunset? Here, have a look.